Hi, and welcome to the DePaSS Report, media that speaks the positive truth. I'm LiLLiA DePaSS, back here at Spelman in the Cosby Academic Center for yet another positive report. This time, a conversation getting ready to start with the Honorable Shirley Franklin. Let's take a look. What advice could you give a young woman today that currently may be faced with an infringement on her equal rights?
I think I would tell her to get help, to find people who are involved in the area of the right she feels is being infringed upon, and to not give up, to strive to stay in the arena. Don't stand on the outside. Get in there and explain what you think is wrong, and you got to seek help, but you've got to stay in the fight.
That was my last question for you. Is this a fight that ends, or is it a constant for us as women and as society?
Well, I think as a society, it's very important. That's why I kept saying you got to be true to yourself. And I think what's happened in this country, especially with young women, you never experienced these things,
right?
And you don't understand that there was a time when you couldn't be pregnant and teach school, or that you couldn't get a safe therapeutic abortion, or that you couldn't get a job in certain kinds of businesses. And in a way, it's good that you don't know these things, but we can never forget.
Fabulous story. I mean, a woman who broke through to allow women to be able to work past the up to the fourth month of pregnancy. Tell us a little bit more about your struggle and what gave you the boldness to fight.
Well, it just seemed like such a ridiculous rule. It had been made by men. It was being enforced by men. The principals were men. The school administration and the school boards were men. And they didn't have a clue about women being, capable of working until it's time to have a baby. It's what women have done for thousands of years. So it was an attempt by men to not have visibly pregnant women in classes, and it made no educational sense, none.
It's a natural act from God, so I do not understand that myself. What are some new that might be in litigation right now currently with respects to women in corporate? Are there any things on the table right now that we're looking at?
Well, some of the areas that continue to be the source of frustration and litigation is, for instance, the number of employees a company has to have before it has to grant paid leave, when it has to hold your place. The extensions on the Family Leave Act. We now have fathers who have figured out that it's important to have time with their children. This country does a terrible job of providing enough time off for mothers and fathers to be with their infants. They really think at 6 weeks, you're done, you've hatched this child, now get yourself back to work. And it's doing a terrible harm to the children of our country.
Wonderful. And I've got a question for you, Miss Powerful Woman. What are some of the greatest challenges you feel women are facing, currently within litigation and the law right now?
Well, I guess if you had asked me 20 or 30 years ago if I'd still be saying this, I probably would have thought we'd be well beyond it. But I still think that there are some assumptions, especially, and you said litigation particularly,
Correct, particularly.
That women aren't up to it, that it's kind of in the DNA of males to be the kind of aggressive litigator type. And what I always found to be true was that a lot of people told me it was rather refreshing for someone to come fully apprised of all the facts and the law, and not with a killer instinct, and not with the feeling that you had to kill the person in order to win your cause. And so I think there's probably some wisdom in that maybe men need to ratchet it down a little bit rather than women having to ratchet it up. that the person on the other side is not my mortal enemy. It's just that we're representing different causes. But I do think that many partners in firms, many associates feel that there's still a glass ceiling in litigation, that it's still a little more difficult perhaps to really get rooted, and to become a senior partner in that arena. But I think as we begin to have more females on the bench, more females in partners and firms, that probably too will go by the wayside.
And speaking of women and corporations at the top, let's talk about, with the economy and the current status that it is in, how important are those WBE programs and MBE, which are minority business enterprise and women business enterprise programs? Yes.
One of the things that made Mayor Jackson's programs very different from anything that had ever been done was that he was not talking about employment. He was talking about people owning businesses and bidding on businesses and joint ventures. And there's no doubt that I think I've read somewhere that after the Atlanta airport was built, it had generated about 10 new millionaires who were able now to take their much smaller firms into a really much elevated level of work. And there's just no question that that's also been true for women. The thing about the recession that's always worried me, and I'm retired now, but I wonder if there isn't a little bit of the accounting principle of last in, first out. And I suspect that what's happening in corporate America is that the last ones in are so often minorities or females, and I'm sure that the same thing is true in law firms, that the last one in, the first one out. And so that's kind of a cyclical thing that always happens when the economy turns down. In time, when there are more of us and we've been there longer periods of time, I think we'd be insulated from that kind of what we call the LIFO principle, L-I-F-O, last in, first out. And so we'll be there longer and be more resistant to that kind of principle.
First female mayor of Atlanta, Miss Shirley Franklin. How are you tonight?
I'm fine. I'm very excited to be at Spelman College.
Absolutely, absolutely. And tell us, what were you doing tonight at Spelman College?
Tonight we had a forum with 3 iconic women who challenged the law and changed the law so that women would have more rights in business, with choice in health, and also employment. They were wonderful.
They were, and I enjoyed listening to all the speakers. And I have a question for you that I want to ask now. What positive input and change do you feel women can actually implement with respect to the Atlanta Beltline project?
Well, it's going to be very interesting because the students who are taking the seminar this semester, they're going to look at population growth, the impact of the Beltline on communities, whether communities will change, whether there'll be new services, new grocery stores. We're also interested in health because we believe if we make it easier and safer to walk and to stay in your community, we will actually see women living longer and children living healthier.
Really enjoyed that. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. It was very informative and really was empowering and inspired me as a woman to know that I can too make change today. Thank you again for joining us here at the LiLLiA Report for all of your positive community stories. You know, you can continue to see more stories like this and reports at www.lipassproductions.com. Until our next report, as always, stay positive.